Good morning, Canada. Welcome back to another episode of Question Period. Today is November 4th, 2024. As you can tell, I am still fighting a bit of a cold here, but that's not going to stop me from paying attention to Canadian politics. So, good news and bad news. The bad news is Justin Trudeau is still prime minister, unfortunately. The good news is that I'm sick and my voice is shot, so I actually don't have the ability to scream into the microphone. So everybody wearing headphones, you are safe for another day. Before we get into it, I do want to encourage you all to smash the like button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet already. It does really help grow the channel and specifically help push the live streams out further. I do realize that in previous live streams, I say drop some L's in the chat, drop some W's in the chat, but there's some people out there that don't know what that means. So W's are reserved for when there's something that's like a win, like a victory, like something awesome that was said, such as the petition to stop Greg Fergus from muting the microphone, which we're going to talk about in a minute. That deserves a W. Or when Pierre destroys Justin Trudeau, which happens almost every time Pierre stands up, that deserves a W. An L would be when Justin Trudeau throws a bit of a tantrum, or when Justin Trudeau, gets the House Speaker Greg Fergus to mute all the microphones, or when Greg Fergus takes it upon his own volition to mute the microphones. That deserves an L. So for everybody who's wondering what that means, now you know. And you're gonna want to jump on the bandwagon, because when I give the green light, as you've probably seen in the past, I've woken up the beast and people flood for tens of minutes. So it's a lot of fun. This is going to be a great one. I believe Pierre is absolutely scheduled to be in the House today. Justin Trudeau is in Ottawa. Whether he will appear in the House or not, we're just going to have to wait and see. This is pretty tense. Lots of tensions in the House of Commons, with the Bloc Québécois pulling out of their support because they didn't get OAS from the Liberals, and the NDP still kind of sitting on the fence. We don't know which way they're leaning right now in terms of support, but we are heading into the absolute potential. Like every professional, every analyst, everybody's expecting another vote of non-confidence to take place anytime soon. And with the rise of the rebel Liberal MPs, it might actually be successful. So I did mention muting the microphone, and for those that haven't yet already, I'd like to encourage you guys to head over to stopmutingthemic.ca. You'll be met with this incredible website that has a lot of great information about Greg Fergus, who's abusing his power and he's muting the microphone. And then you can tell your MPs. So when you click on that right there, it'll bring you to this page on the website, and it has a map of all the MPs in Canada. So you just got to find where you live. And then for your convenience, it also has a template for you to copy and paste and insert your MP's name and insert your name should you wish to use this template. And it sends a beautiful email to your local MP or whomever you want to make aware of the petition. And then if you want to sign the petition, you go to sign now at the top right, or down here in the middle, sign the petition here, and it'll bring you to the Our Commons website. And this is the petition I've put forward to stop Greg Fergus from muting the microphone based on the grounds of discrimination against the visually impaired. And Greg Fergus has since answered my email, personally answered my email. I'm actually going to frame it. I'm going to put it up there one of these days. I'm going to frame the email. But nonetheless, you can sign the petition here. You can see that over 10,482 people have signed this petition so far. So phenomenal amount of support. And since the petition has gone live, we actually haven't really seen Greg Fergus mute the microphone. And since he's answered my emails about the petition directly, addressed me personally, right, from Greg Fergus, who typed it up himself, he's absolutely aware of the petition. So it's kind of crazy, but we are making a difference. And then for those that might want to purchase a sticker pack, I've released a code in the past to members, but I'll release it right now for you guys on the live stream. All right. So if you head over to the website, which is linked down below in the description, and it's a pinned comment of the live stream, you get this sticker pack here. And I think it's like 15% off when you use code SUNSHINE. Use code SUNSHINE and you get 15% off. So you get only scams, you get Freeland on a broom, Trudeau must go, keep calm and never vote Liberal, and stop the WEF. I'm not going to repeat the code. It's been said, and there you go. Without further ado, let's get into today's question period here, folks.
Talk about why it is so important.
They're currently doing privileged statements, and then they're going to be getting into statements by members very soon.
What that means to him.
The honourable member for Souris Moose Mountain.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I thank my friend and colleague from Calgary Nose Hill for a great question, especially at this important point of time. It is very humbling for me to be here in this House because the privileges that I have today are thanks to so many Canadian veterans. And those privileges are what I believe in. Those privileges that I have here, as I mentioned in my speech, that this seat doesn't belong to me. It belongs to my constituents. And the people that we will be remembering in a couple of days will be those who gave us that right to sit here and to speak, to sit here and represent our constituents, because this is their seat. I am here just to be the voice for those people. We are all just here to be the voice for those people. And we need to continue to be the voice for those
Marianne Wales, welcome to the membership
after
program.
them, and will continue on for generations and generations.
You're always like a first comment on the videos.
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary of the Government House Leader.
Yes, thank you, Madam Speaker. I'm wondering if I may, just to express what I believe a vast majority of Canadians are in fact concerned about. You have the leader of the Conservative Party of Canada who wants to be the Prime Minister but refuses to get the security clearance. It begs the question as to why, and it's a legitimate question, Madam Speaker. What is it that the leader of the Conservative Party is so scared of? Is there something personal in his background that he does not want Canadians to know, Madam Speaker?
That's such a weird
That is a
take.
legitimate question. And I believe that Canadians have a right to know.
The fact that he says it's a legitimate question proves it's not.
House of Commons, the Greens, the Blocs, the NDP, the Liberals, we all have it. But the leader of the Conservative Party has chosen not to get it. Does he believe Canadians have a right to know why not?
The honourable member for Souris Moose Mountain.
Madam Speaker, squirrel! Did someone see that squirrel that just ran through here? Because that's what these Liberals love to do, Madam Speaker. They love to scream the squirrel so you look at something else as opposed to paying attention to what's been going on. That's what they want. They just want to distract Canadians so that they can say, oh, we can talk about something else as about talking about the $400 million
What's that?
that they handed out to their friends.
Squirrel.
People drive by on the highway, or driving on the highway, and they'll go, oh, there's nothing to see here, keep going, keep going. And that's what they're all doing here. Nothing to see here, just keep going, we're doing just fine. $400 million. And the government wants to tell Canadians, don't look this way, don't worry about it. It's only $400 million, because it's only million. It's not billion, it's not trillion. $400 million, Madam Speaker.
For a brief question, the honourable member for Provencher. Sorry, he's been trying to
There you go. Someone just bought a sticker pack.
My friend from Souris.
Thank you, Raymond,
for his excellent speech. At the beginning of his speech, he talked about his grandchildren and how important it was that he was here to secure their future. And could he elaborate a little bit more on why it's important to illuminate the corruption of this Liberal government and what it will mean for future generations?
The honourable member for Souris Moose Mountain has 50 seconds to respond.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I thank my colleague for that great question. And thank you again for allowing me to highlight my grandchildren, because they are the most important part of my life, other than my wife. And I need to put that on record. So I have witnesses. So, but Madam Speaker,
smart man.
That is what's so important here. We need to remember, who's paying that debt? Who's going to end up paying this $400 million, which is going to be added to the $1.2 trillion that's already being accumulated by this government? When you talk 1.2, Canadians trying to turn around and say, well, it's only 0.2. But when I point out to them, that 0.2 is $200 billion.
Yeah.
Who's going to pay that? It's going to be my grandchildren. It's going to be your grandchildren. It's going to be everyone's grandchildren, and then some who are going to have to pay that.
Resuming debate, the honourable member Thornhill.
Speaker, what a tough act to
Oh, here we go.
those brilliant words in accountability for this government. But it has been nearly, or actually it's been a month. It's been a month that this House of Commons remains at a standstill, and the Prime Minister and these NDP Liberals will stop at nothing to throw sand in the gears of Parliament in a blatant attempt to cover up their costly corruption. These documents are still missing. The taxpayer money is still gone. The dirty deeds still go unpunished. It's been more than a month. And when you look at the numbers, it's astounding. $400 million vanished. 186 conflicts of interest, one government in contempt of Parliament. They refuse to hand over the evidence to the RCMP, and that's exactly why we are here. They don't want Canadians to know who got the money and how. They don't want Canadians to know how badly they've mismanaged this boondoggle. They don't want the RCMP to start sniffing around on what's actually going on. That just tells us that whatever is in those documents must be really, really bad. It must be more than your usual garden variety Liberal corruption. If you shut down Parliament for a month, there must be something brutal in those documents. And I think Canadians have a right to know. That's why we're still here. Day in and day out, parties in this House are demanding that the Liberals do their basic duty and provide transparency that Canadians deserve, and frankly, the Speaker demanded. And while they stand up claiming that government is working in the best interest of Canadians, as that's what their objective is, it's a bit rich from a party that has now stopped this place from operating for a month. The paper trail must be so long and lead all the way to the top. That's the only conclusion to draw from why they've stopped this place from working for a month. Nearly 10 years ago, the Prime Minister pledged that he would lead, quote, the most transparent and open government in the world. Those were his words. 10 years later, it's easy to see just how far they've fallen. And his caucus are now forced to do the dirty work to cover up yet another scandal from this government. If stonewalling documents about corruption for months on end is the behavior of the world's most transparent government, then I'd hate to see what happens in the world's least transparent government. If the Prime Minister wanted to make the promise about transparency, then maybe he should have said that he would lead the most transparently corrupt and incompetent government. That would be a promise that he can certainly brag about keeping. That would result in us not having to be here certainly for a month, arguing with them about their basic duty to turn over the documents to the cops. But Conservatives have a plan, and they have a plan on keeping a promise too. And that's our promise to hold this government accountable for every bad decision that they make, for every grifter that gets rich off of Canadian tax dollars, and for every ethical lapse in judgment from this Prime Minister and the cabal of Liberals that have been a problem in that respect. And every conflict of interest, that is the duty of the opposition, and that is one that we take seriously, and that is one that we will argue here in this place for as long as it takes for these guys to actually be accountable to Canadians. We won't let up until we make sure that Canadians have the answer and that this doesn't happen again. But now it seems that with the culture of corruption, with the Liberal and the NDP parties, they've transferred over to another party. It seems like the Bloc wants in on the action too. They're offering the Prime Minister a secret deal to let him off the hook for this corruption and incompetence in order to serve the Bloc's narrow interest, a deal with the devil, so to speak.
What?
Between them and the federal government to see all the corruption swept under the rug until the next scandal. And we know there will be another one. And to get a firmer grip on power and play politics with the rights and the privileges and the obligations of this place. When Canadians look at this Parliament, they see Liberals and Conservatives and NDP and Bloc and Green Party members. But now it's clear that there are over 5 parties in this place, Madam Speaker, who actually sit here, but there are really only two parties. One mega party that supports the Prime Minister and his agenda, blindly voting to declare, continued unaccountability to the Canadian people. But more than that, unfettered confidence in his leadership. And only one party that is really standing up for Canadians. But after 9 years of this Prime Minister, Madam Speaker, the most devoted Liberals are realizing that the Prime Minister's corruption and incompetence are just too much to handle.
Not worth the cost.
At least 24 of them, at least 24 that we know of, have finally seen the light, demanding a change. Because the writing is on the wall. They feel it in their own constituencies with people that used to be excited to see them. They are fed up with everything that this Prime Minister has become, everything that he has become that he said that he wouldn't do. They see record high inflation and home prices. They see out of control government spending. They just see how out of reach life has become in Canada. They, like all of us, like almost every Canadian, have lost confidence in this Prime Minister. And really, Mr. Speaker, who can blame them? It's now evident that they'll do anything to stay in power. Even a humiliating U-turn that we saw last week on immigration when they set these sky-high targets and then had to reverse themselves. Even throwing around unfounded conspiratorial accusations like you just heard from questioning right before me, the leader of the opposition and foreign governments. The tinfoil hats over there must be real tight. Even turning the trite and frankly ridiculous fear-mongering about individual rights, things like abortion in this country that every Canadian now sees through. It's the same old strategy, Madam Speaker. Divide and conquer. Divide this country into smaller and smaller pieces so it's easier to keep a grip on power and make sure that everybody forgets how miserable this Prime Minister has made their life. Yeah. Canadians are tired of this. They're tired of the division, and they're tired of being labeled as some kind of other. They're tired of being told that north is south and up is down and wrong is right. And certainly they are tired of a government that cares more about itself than Canadians. That's what this whole saga is about. It's not just Canadians. It's not just the Prime Minister who's not in it for Canadians. He's in it for himself and for his friends. As long as he has to cling to the job for a bit longer, to ship some more money off to Liberal insiders, he'll do whatever it takes to stay in power, and they will do whatever it takes to argue in this place, not to do their duty and hand over the documents to the RCMP like the Speaker ordered them to. Look at everything happening outside of this place. Violent crime is up 30%. Crimes with firearms have doubled in this country since the Prime Minister came to power. Legal drugs on our streets, loved ones who can't get the help that they need. Car theft in my home region of York Region is up 300% in just 3 years. And there are members of the Liberal caucus who are celebrating an hourly drop in auto theft patterns, and they're patting themselves on the back for it. You don't need to celebrate a 20% decrease in auto theft when it increased 300% under your watch. That's not success. It is a victory lap on failure. And that is exactly what they are doing. The average home price in that same region is $1.3 million, a runaway deficit spending from a finance minister who still misses her targets. Canadians already struggling to make ends meet and afford a place to live are staring down the barrel of even more tax hikes and price increases. And we see it day after day, month after month, year after year, after 9 years of these guys. What we just found out is platforms like Spotify are raising subscription fees.
Yeah, everything's going up.
The Finance Minister already told everybody in this House and every Canadian that she would cut Disney Plus, and I guess she's going to have to tell them to cut Spotify too. That's the latest of the tone-deaf, condescending suggestions from a finance minister who has somebody else pulling the strings at her own department. That's not to mention the serious allegation of election interference from foreign states and the Prime Minister's dangerous complicity in it, or the instability and the insanity happening on the other side of the world in the Middle East, or the out-of-control anti-Semitism on our streets. And we can't talk about any of that in this place. We can't fix any of those things because the government is focused on running out the clock while they try to cover up for their own mismanagement, their own scandal-ridden government. That's what this debate is about. It's about making sure that we no longer let this Prime Minister use his office as a platform to enrich his friends and his own self-interest at the taxpayer expense. There's an easy fix to all of this, and it can happen in mere minutes. The government just needs to release the documents. Give them to the cops. All of them. That's all. We can put this to bed today. Not at a committee, not in its redacted form, just the full documents. If they truly had nothing to hide, then they shouldn't be scared of anything. They certainly shouldn't be scared of turning those documents over. There's no reason why that release cannot happen except for this own government's own obstinance in this place. And you can tell by the arguments that they're making that they are desperate to avoid accountability, blathering on about their endless nonsense about the Charter, which they have used to trample on the rights of Canadians when it suits them.
Yeah, she's referring to the actual trampling at the convoy.
So that it dies, this issue dies a slow death under the guise of transparency, and so on and so on. Madam Speaker, I will say this, the Charter was created to protect Canadians from their government. It was not created to protect this government from Canadians, this government from accountability, these Liberals from the people that actually voted them in here. And equally, if there are allegations and there is wrongdoing, you don't call a committee. You call the RCMP, the people with the power to prosecute the corruption and get Canadians their money back. Get every single Canadian their taxpayers, and get every single Canadian the accountability to see what their government is doing with their money. That is the least that they can do in this place now after a month of arguing this motion. That's what's come after 9 years of this Liberal government. We need the Mounties to now come in and sort things out, because the Prime Minister is obviously not able to sort things out by himself, or that more likely that he's covering up something. He's out of his depth on this in every single way. Like when it comes to representing Canada on the world stage, he allows the nation to be humiliated and embarrassed time and time and again, whether it's a stirring rendition of Bohemian Rhapsody or allowing our country to become a playground for hostile foreign governments, or when it comes to managing our economy. It's a shocker. It is a shocker that the guy who says that the economy grows out from the heart believes that the budget will balance itself and doesn't think about monetary policy and couldn't grow the economy, balance the budget, control inflation rates or interest rates in any way. Not just for this generation, but for generations to come. Or even when it comes to just doing basic things. His government couldn't even make a simple app work. It took them months.
It cost 60-some million.
They sent 10,000 people inadvertently, unjustified, to a quarantine. That app should have never existed, didn't need it. It could have been built in a weekend if we needed it at all. And certainly there's corruption in that case itself. And it is no wonder that his caucus and his party are revolting against the Prime Minister. Even in former fortresses like downtown Montreal and downtown Toronto, where they've just repudiated 9 years of this Prime Minister by electing members from other parties. But one thing the Prime Minister excels at, and we should give him some credit, he excels at shipping off other people's money to line the pockets of Liberal insiders. Pet projects, money to massive corporations, while Canadians go hungry and lose sight of the country that we all once knew and loved. $12 million to Loblaws, $26 million to Costco, over $100 million to McKinsey, $107 million to GC Strategy. That's the two-person company that's run out of a basement in Ottawa. $900 million to the Wheat Charity, $50 million to MasterCard, billions of dollars of bloated bureaucracies like to Bombardier, and of course to the CBC. And no one can forgive or forget the $100 million that the government has shipped to UNRWA, an agency founded to employ terrorists and participated in the October 7th massacre, and is now trying to argue that it is legally immune from being responsible in doing so. And again, while Canadians go dumpster diving because they can't afford the price of food, Mr. Speaker, we will put an end to all of this. We will put an end to the corporate welfare that lines the pockets of liberal insiders doing nothing to create jobs or prosperity in this country. We will immediately stop funding UNRWA and start funding our own NATO allies instead. And we will, of course,
Increase the defense budget.
The CBC.
Yeah.
They're like without question. But on maybe the CBC first. Simply put, we will give Canadians back control of their money, of their wallets, of their lives, something that this government has refused to do time and time again. It is why we are here after almost a month of arguing why this government will not turn over documents that you yourself, Mr. Speaker, have told them to turn over, why they will cower from accountability for the people, for their taxpayers to know where their money went, who it enriched, what's in those documents. Mr. Speaker, if they had nothing to hide, they would turn these documents over today. They would turn them over today, and we can end this, and we can get back to Parliament and fix the things that they have broken in this country after 9 years. Cut taxes, build homes, fix the budget, stop crime. There is any number of issues that they have screwed up over 9 years, and we can get back to business if they just turned over those documents to the RCMP exactly like you told them to.
Oh, mon Dieu, tout fini. Drop some W's in the chat.
Privileged to move on to statements by
Holy
members as well as
crap.
question period. The honourable member will have 3 minutes and 25 seconds left to continue.
I don't think she needs any more. I think she was done.
Statements by members.
Holy smokes. I wish I could yell. I wish I could yell. That was insane.
Mr. Speaker,
You can tell why she's Pierre's right-hand man or woman.
that few others have.
That was an incredible, incredible speech.
At Canadian Heritage. As a young staffer, I was in awe of him. I had the true honor, Mr. Speaker, of seeing
Man,
his
Pierre's done a fantastic job of picking people close to him.
guidance on the creation of
That was
legislation to protect
awesome.
Indigenous languages. I've never seen a public figure so universally revered as him. Senator Sinclair is nothing short of a national hero. Most notably, his work leading the National Commission on Truth and Reconciliation changed the trajectory of this country in the most important of ways. His work to help heal...
Someone says, can I get the cliff notes? Yeah, Melissa Landsman just did like a 15 or 16 minute speech that was like jaw-dropping. No hiccups, no ums and ahs.
Thank you for helping us to find
Holy
the best
crap, man.
versions of ourselves in service of this beautiful country. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member from Abbotsford.
Last week, we laid my father, Edward E. Fast, to rest. He was 97. Raised in Manitoba as a child of Mennonite immigrants,
Alma Gaming
he
says,
survived the dirty 30s. By
is age catching up to you after
1860s,
watching Trudeau?
a kind stepmother struggled to
No,
feed
I'm
him.
just sick, man.
Though poor, Dad was
Thanks.
an excellent student and studied dentistry in Toronto. 9 months after marrying Helena Schultz, I was born, and we moved to Vancouver. There, my father practiced dentistry for many years.
Sam with the 279 saying squirrel.
To ensure that we were
Yeah,
deeply
same with Canadian Rick with the $2 saying squirrel. Dude, that was so funny.
Christian faith.
The same with no or number with the 10 saying squirrel.
It was he who 60 years ago inspired my own career in politics.
Jasper needs
Father in
pharmacare.
heaven will have welcomed Dad with
I need the pharmacare plan, guys.
good and faithful servant. Predeceased by our mother.
And Kit with the 199 saying best Prime Minister Canada was Stephen Harper.
And at last count,
Soon to be Pierre Poilievre.
great-grandchildren.
Canadian Rick putting squirrels. It's funny. Stephen Patterson,
Member from Brampton.
welcome to the membership program.
Mr. Speaker, November is Diabetes Awareness Month. Every 3 minutes,
all three leaders are the same crooks, liars, all for the French.
I want to recognize organizations
People are definitely
like
protecting the bloc.
Canada, Breakthrough, T1D, Diabetes Action Canada, CDA, NIDA.
Matthew Galligan with the 10 saying we need to change it so that
All the researchers,
there is a vote in on
advocates,
confidence.
and
If there's a vote in on confidence, it needs to come back to the Canadian people.
This month is a time to raise awareness for diabetes. I encourage
Well, that's what the
all
election's for.
parliamentarians to attend Kids for a Cure reception happening tonight at Parliament Hill. The kids are here today from across Canada to raise awareness on diabetes. Also this week, on November 8th, I will be hosting the 4th annual World Diabetes Day flag raising ceremony in my city of Brampton. I encourage everyone to join me there. I'm so proud of the work our government has done to pass the Pharmacare Act so that Canadians living with diabetes will have access to diabetes medication. Just as this House stood united behind my bill C-237 to create a national framework for diabetes, by working together, we can defeat diabetes.
Shout out to Martin for buying a sticker pack with the code that I said
Member for Beauport,
at the start of the stream.
Beaupré, Ile d'Orléans, Charlevoix.
Canadian Rick with the $2, putting more squirrels in the chat. Dude, that was so funny, man.
The cultural
Sometimes these Canadian politicians, they say the darnest
at the
things.
age of 67 years.
Squirrel!
He knew everyone, and everyone
What
knew
the
him
heck?
and appreciated him. He was a natural communicator.
Can we put squirrels in the chat? Is that something that you think we could do?
Added prestige to our cultural events. He frequented the biggest stars in Hollywood, but his passion was always for Quebec. He always was able to underscore our artists locally, and the Bloc would like to offer their sincerest condolences to his loved ones and his son Julien, and pay tribute to the son of Haiti, who offered some of the most important moments of the Quebec artistic scene. The Honourable Member for Sherbrooke. Mr. Speaker, November 14th is
Angel,
World Diabetes
welcome
Day.
to the member. Angel or Angle?
Opportunity to raise public
Oh, no.
awareness of this disease, which affects 1 in 10 worldwide. In Quebec,
How do I not know which is which?
1 million people live with diabetes. Today, I met some diabetic children who are visiting Parliament. They told me about their daily lives with the disease. And I was impressed
Angel,
not only by
welcome to
their
the membership
courage and
program.
resilience, but also by their plans and
Oh my
dreams,
God,
which
there's all the
define
squirrels in the chat. Rest in peace,
very
Peanut.
the situation
That's
faced
right.
by these families, because in February 2017,
Democrats
at the
killed a
age of
freaking
18,
squirrel.
My son Charles was also diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. Thanks to research, the equipment Charles uses has greatly improved. It greatly facilitates the daily
Just pretend
management
you
of
know.
this disease, allowing him, among other things, to flourish as a physical education teacher. I'd like to take this opportunity to pay tribute to the people who live with this disease
Angel.
and their loved ones who
Googled it.
support them. I'm very happy that the Canadian government is working to develop a universal national pharmacare plan, which will provide...
All right, folks, let's try and get over 1,000 likes on the stream, eh?
Thank you, Mr.
We're pretty close.
Avant que je passe au...
Before I move on to the next person, I would like to tell all members to please keep your statements to 60 seconds or less. I don't like to go over too much.
grasslands.
After 9 long years, Canadians are desperate for a change from the NDP Liberal government. Food Banks Canada recently released their...
I cannot believe that we're going to witness history tomorrow with the American election.
Increase in food bank visits compared to the previous year, which had already broken a previous record. That's what we're seeing happen under this carbon tax regime. That failed socialist experiment starves Canadians, and it attacks our energy industry, which is key to Western Canada's economy and fuels prosperity across the country. Back home in Saskatchewan, Food Banks of Saskatchewan has said that children make up 30% of people in need nationally. But in Saskatchewan, that number jumps up for children up to 39%. That's almost a 10% increase. Meanwhile, the total number of visits has gone up 42% since 2019 due to carbon tax, inflation, and housing costs. The Liberals refuse to fix what they broke, and that's exactly why Canadians are demanding change. Conservatives stand ready to axe the tax and bring home affordability.
Rory said he's got the porn stash.
A carbon tax election.
No doubt.
The honourable member from Davenport.
He's a shirt tucker. He's got his shirt fully tucked in. Even when he doesn't need to, probably tucks his PJs.
1923, Turkey was formally declared a republic. It was also the day they elected their first president, Mustafa Kemal Atatürk. Atatürk, beloved to this day by Turks all around the world, and is credited with creating the foundations of modern-day Turkey.
Andre with the 2 saying, Chatterstorm, create a one-to-one squirrel token. Storm.
Enrich the social fabric of Canadian society.
I don't think I fully understand what that means, but thank you nonetheless.
75,000 strong. Organizations such as the Federation of Canadian Turkish Associations and the Turkish Culture and Folkloric Society of Canada.
Larry says he ordered his stickers.
Important events
Awesome, Larry.
Throughout the year. I want to acknowledge them and thank them for their contributions. Canada is stronger because of our diversity, and the Turkish-Canadian community has made us a stronger and better country. Thank you, Mr.
I see your order, Larry. I'll ship it out today for you.
The honourable member from St. Catharines.
Last week, the Conservative leader announced his plan to shut down housing projects across the country. He's proposing
JL with the 2.
devastate housing programs.
He also tucks his.
Including in my own riding of St. Catharines. Even his own
Can't say that.
going behind his back to secretly write the minister to support
He also tucks his pee-pee.
fund and advocate that their communities get the funding their leader wants to cut. Let's be clear about what's at stake. Reckless
We're almost at 1,000 likes, folks. Let's see if we can get there, huh?
750,000 homes over the next decade. By his own math, the Conservative leader wants to build at least 450,000 fewer homes. Canadians can't afford these cuts to housing. Conservative MPs need to stand up for their communities and stand up against their leader's reckless housing cuts. We need to build more homes, not less. It's painfully obvious that the Conservative leader is not serious about housing.
The honourable member from Calgary Nose Hill.
Mr. Speaker, last year a report from an international tax watchdog accused Brookfield of dodging taxes around the world, stating that there is an apparent pattern of aggressive tax avoidance consistent across Brookfield's global operations. So it's no coincidence that last week Brookfield, a megacorp chaired by senior Liberal economic advisor Mark Carbon Tax Carney, announced it's moving its headquarters from Toronto to Wall Street. Reports say Brookfield pays a measly average tax rate of 6.1%, but the average Canadian family pays a whopping 45% of their average household income in taxes. Here's the reality. Carney gets paid more if Brookfield pays less tax. And while he works to make sure that his company pays less tax, he wants Canadians to pay more carbon tax, all while he's formally advising the Prime Minister on economic policies without ethics or lobbying guidelines. Colleagues, this is wrong. It's time for the NDP Liberals to stop letting this man put his own profit over the people of Canada.
Hear, hear. The honourable member from Surrey Centre.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Last week we learned that the Conservative leader will reverse Canada's housing program and cut programs that are building more homes.
Yeah, he's going to cut Liberal jobs, man.
And across the country. And it's not just his own MPs that disagree with his reckless housing.
Reminder, guys, we're almost at 1,000 likes. If you haven't yet, please hit that like button.
Conservative MPs
and check to see if you're subscribed. YouTube has been unsubscribing people.
Surrey and every local community across Canada. But the Conservative leader wants to shut these housing projects down. Interest rates are down. Housing starts are up. Housing permits are up. We need to build on this progress, not take it backwards to the days when the Conservative leader was Harper's former failed housing minister. He failed to build more homes back then, and he wants to reverse housing progress now. Canadians can't afford these Conservative housing cuts. We need more homes, and we won't let the Conservative leader stand in our way. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Good job. The honourable member from Miramichi Grand Lake.
Mr. Speaker, after 9 years of this NDP Liberal costly coalition, there is only one person keeping the Prime Minister in power. That is the leader of the NDP. Remember the NDP leader's big stunt when he told Canadians he ripped up the coalition deal with the Liberals. It was just a scam on the poor voters of Elmwood Transcona right before a by-election. The NDP leader said, and I quote, "The fact is, the Liberals are too weak, too selfish, and too beholden to corporate interest to fight for Canadians." While the NDP leader supports the punishing carbon tax, voting for it over 24 times, Canadians visit food banks in record-smashing numbers. Every day the Prime Minister stays in power, it is because of the leader of the NDP who lacks the courage to do elsewhere. It is time for the Prime Minister to call a carbon tax election now so Canadians can make the choice.
That's right, here.
The Honourable Member for Levis-Lotbinière. Mr. Speaker, after 9 years, the bloc is not worth the cost of housing. Rents, mortgage payments and down payments have doubled. But the good news is that a Conservative government will slash the federal sales tax on new homes sold across the country.
Yeah, and Pierre's putting pressure on premiers to do the same.
$2,200 a year in mortgage payments on an $800,000 home. This measure will stimulate
Pierre's like really, really good, man, at politicking.
Homes a year and give buyers who are struggling.
He's turning an entire country.
Mr. Speaker,
all the political leaders against Justin Trudeau, slowly.
Hailed by the Quebec Property Owners Corporation as a step in the right direction that will ease the cost of housing.
Yeah, he does kind of look like Mr. Bean, Phoebe.
The evidence is clear that the only common-sense Conservatives will restore Canada's promise, where hard work guarantees a bigger paycheck that buys food and affordable housing in safe neighborhoods. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member from Windsor to Tecumseh.
Mr. Speaker, this Friday my wife and I were honoured to join the vibrant and growing Sikh community in Windsor-Tecumseh to celebrate Bundi Chor Divas. We prayed together, lit clay lamps, rolled roti in the kitchen, and shared langar. The news from the RCMP that foreign agents of the Government of India participated in serious crimes on Canadian soil against Sikh Canadians has shaken my community, just as it has shaken all Canadians from coast to coast to coast. To think for even 1 second that a member of my community could be targeted or killed for their religious or political beliefs by an agent working on behalf of a foreign government is abhorrent. An attack on one Canadian is an attack on all Canadians and our shared values of democracy and freedom. Mr. Speaker, it is past time for the leader of the Conservative Party to join all opposition leaders in getting his security clearance. It is past time to put the nation ahead of himself. There is nothing more important than protecting Canadians.
The Honourable Member from Nanaimo Ladysmith.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In Nanaimo Ladysmith, we are fortunate to have individuals and organizations championing the rights of those living with disabilities. One such group is the Self-Advocates of Nanaimo, providing a platform for people with diverse abilities to have a voice and to join together in advocacy, mentorship, education, and community building. It was such an honor to meet with self-advocates Miranda, Barbara, Pat, Crystal, CJ, Nick, and Ryan, as well as the advisory and outreach supporters Gwen and Cheyenne. These incredible self-advocates shared with me important stories of strength, as well as that of unacceptable challenges. People living with disabilities need and deserve enough to live with dignity and respect. Up to $200 a month is nowhere near enough. The applications necessary for supports need to be free and accessible, and housing is in dire need. To the self-advocates of Nanaimo, I hear you.
Joey Olasky with $13.99 Super Sicker. Thank you, Joey.
The Honourable Member for Drummond. Quebec culture shone brightly last night, all dressed up in our finest for the annual High Mass of
And Matthew Galligan with the 2 saying gaslighting squirrels. I'll eat my apples all day long.
Was to see and hear Quebec artists of all generations who continue to enrich our culture, from traditional music to pop, rap, and hip-hop. It was magical to see Les Trois Écorts, Karuka, Roxane Bruno, Rock Voisine, and Isabelle Boulay, among others. All were electrifying on stage. How touching to remember the departed Jean-Pierre Ferland and Carl Tremblay. And how satisfying was it to see the cowboy fringant walk away with 3 Felix Awards. And although the evening was festive, we also must remember that the culture needs to be taken seriously when it comes to support, such as reform of the Copyright Act to ensure a future for our creators. But despite these challenges, they're always there to sing our joys, our sorrows, and our hopes. Thanks to Quebec artists, the show is far from over. Thank you.
The honourable member from Hastings, Lennox and Addington.
After 9 years of NDP Liberals, they are not worth the cost of homes and housing. The sad reality is that this government is focused on building deficits, not homes, and young Canadians are paying the price. Over half of Canadians under 35 say they want to own a home, and that same amount are saying this government's economic mismanagement is making that dream impossible. Yeah. Common sense Conservatives will axe the tax on new homes sold. On an $800,000 home, this tax cut will save homebuyers $2,200 a month in mortgage payments. The response to this plan has been impressive. The Canadian Real Estate Association said a positive move toward lowering building costs, increasing housing supplies, and making home ownership more attainable for Canadians. And Habitat for Humanity concluded that it would reduce costs, passing on savings to Habitat homeowners. Mr. Speaker, it is only the Conservatives that have united industry, advocates, and Canadians on housing, and it is only Conservatives that will build the houses and bring young Canadians home.
The honourable member from Brampton North.
Happy Diwali, Mr. Speaker. Last week I celebrated the Festival of Lights in my riding by going to local mandirs and gurdwaras, and what made Diwali even more special was that the Prime Minister dropped by to celebrate with Bramptonians. Today we'll continue the grand celebration on the Hill, hosted by the Liberal caucus, with many in attendance from across the country. This celebration on the Hill is a testament to our commitment to inclusivity and respect for all communities. In contrast, the Conservative caucus cancelled their Diwali celebration, proving that all the Conservatives care about is themselves. The celebration of Diwali is one that is shared among Hindus and Sikhs, and over the last few days I've witnessed these communities celebrating together in harmony. However, I am also deeply troubled by what took place yesterday. First, the protests and acts of violence that took place outside the Hindu Sabha Mandir, and then the counter-protests and violence that took place at Guru Singh Sabha Gurdwara. Everyone deserves to feel safe and respected in their places of worship. There is no room for such actions in our society. Let's respect the true essence and teachings of Diwali and Bandi Chhor Divas. Come together in respect and unity.
Happy Halloween. How about we do that instead?
Oral questions.
Oral questions. Questions are Honourable Andrew Scheer.
9 years of this NDP Liberal Prime Minister's economic vandalism. Over 2 million Canadians are visiting a food bank in a single month. Housing costs have doubled, and inflation continues to eat away at Canadians' paychecks. His massive deficits and tax hikes are causing extreme damage to the Canadian economy. For 8 out of the last 9 quarters, Canadian per-person GDP is down. This is a made-in-Canada per-person GDP recession. That means Canadian workers work harder but bring home less. So will the Prime Minister stop his economic vandalism and cancel his job-killing, paycheck-shrinking tax hikes?
The Honourable Minister for Indigenous Services.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This morning we heard the sad news of the passing of the Honourable Murray Sinclair. Let me take a moment before we begin today to say a few words about him. As a former judge, senator, and chair of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, Murray was determined to help Canada reckon with its colonial realities and bring healing to this country. He was a visionary and a leader, and his kind and fierce commitment to truth has pushed Canada forward in profound and lasting ways. Our hearts and minds are with his family, and Canada is a much better place for his service.
Okay.
The Honourable Member from Regina Capel.
I join in my honourable colleagues' sending of condolences, but we are witnessing economic vandalism in real time. Last Thursday, this government was briefed that the only sector of the Canadian economy actually producing any growth was the energy sector. And what did they do today? They slapped a punishing cap on Canadian production.
Exactly.
All this will do is chase investments and jobs to other countries. But that's something this Prime Minister is good at. He's increased Canadian investment into the U.S. by $63 billion last year alone. So will the Prime Minister stop fueling the U.S. economy, cancel his tax hikes, and cancel the production cap to bring those investment dollars back home?
Yeah, we need to invest in the Canadian economy.
The Honourable Minister for Natural Resources and Energy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today, we were very pleased to announce an emissions cap with respect to the oil and gas sector in this country. Given that oil and gas constitutes 31% of Canada's greenhouse gas emissions, it is important that we work with the sector to reduce emissions, just as we do with every sector. It is also true that as we move towards a lower carbon economy across the world, oil and gas produced with the lowest emissions is actually going to have value around the world. We are moving forward with a plan to address climate change and build a strong economy going forward. They are stuck in the past and ignoring the science of climate.
No. Taxes aren't going to fix the weather, dude.
Member, just going to ask the Honourable Member from Calgary Centre, please, to hold on until his question is turned to ask a question. The Honourable Member from Regina Capel.
All this production cap will do is make other countries richer while making Canadians poorer. But that's something this Prime Minister is so good at. Consider this, GDP per capita in Canada, down. In the U.S., it's up. 9 years ago, average wages in the U.S. and Canada were almost identical. Now, an American worker brings home $22,000 more than their Canadian counterpart. And $500 billion in investments has fled Canada to the United States, creating bigger paychecks for American workers, all because of this Prime Minister's high taxes and massive deficits. The Prime Minister is the #1 job creator in the United States. So instead of helping the Canadian economy, why not fight for Canada for once?
There you go. Why is it so hard to be pro-Canadian and a politician?
Climate change.
Mr. Speaker, maybe the member opposite should take the time to actually read the information about the pollution cap. Production is forecast to increase 16% by 2030, Mr. Speaker. So this idea that we're somehow cutting production is simply not true.
The Honourable Member for Mégantic-L'Érable. After 9 years of this Prime Minister, supported by the Bloc, $500 million has left Canada for the U.S. The Conservatives bring investment and jobs back to Canada. This Prime Minister's high taxes and deficits have helped the U.S. prosper while Canadians are desperately trying to house and feed themselves. A U.S. worker now earns $22,000 more than his Canadian counterpart.
Yeah, people are leaving Canada to make way more money in America and better quality of life.
Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance. Mr. Speaker, I'm a patriotic Canadian woman, and I believe that we live in a wonderful country. I wouldn't want to be American. But if the Conservatives want to compare, well, this is what should be compared. Inflation is lower in Canada. The prime lending rate is lower in Canada. The average Canadian's lifespan is 4 years longer. So the Conservatives keep thinking the U.S. is better than Canada. The Honourable Member for Mégantic-L'Érable. What's worse is after 9 years of this Prime Minister, three different U.S. presidents, this government has been incapable of producing wealth in Canada. The gap between wealth is growing, whether it's the softwood lumber or the Buy American Act. This Prime Minister has failed miserably to protect Canadian workers. He's creating more jobs. He's the #1 job creator in the U.S. When will the Prime Minister stand up for Canada, cut taxes, and bring our money and our jobs and our investments back to Canada?
Did he say Trudeau's the #1 job creator in America?
Mr. Speaker, once again, here's what we do better in Canada. Inflation is lower. The prime lending rate is lower. The average lifespan is longer. I will quote from David Rosenberg, a well-known economist. He said that last week, investors based in the U.S. should contemplate leaving New York for Toronto, and that's because he knows that Canadian companies are doing better. Who better to quote?
Dude, Canadian companies suck.
The honourable member for La Prairie. On the eve of the U.S. elections, Peter Harder and other senators must not be blocking our bill to protect supply management in free trade deals, because we know that the U.S. wants to reopen the trade deal. This is not just harmful, it's dangerous because it will cause hundreds of thousands of job losses in Quebec. Will the Prime Minister stop threatening Quebec's farmers? The Honourable Minister of Agriculture and Agri-Food. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, being a farmer all my life and then being involved in the supply management system for all my agricultural career, I am fully aware of how valuable the supply management system is to this country. And I belong to a government and a party that has initiated supply management and continue to support supply management. And I can tell my honourable colleague in this country that this government will continue to support the supply management program.
The honourable member for La Prairie.
I think that guy's way too old
The next U.S. president could open up
to be a
NAFTA
politician.
or the free trade deal in 2026. And depending who wins, it could be our supply management system that pays the price. So our farmers would like to hear their will respected. They don't want two unelected senators to hold up a bill to protect supply management. Will the Prime Minister stop those two senators from preventing C-282 from passing? The Honourable Minister of National Revenue. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We've already explained to our Bloc friends.
Didn't this chick quit?
That senators are independent. And the other thing is that the Bloc admits
Also,
they can't protect supply management. The only
she does not rock a
because
leather
we
jacket.
really want to, and we're committed to doing so, is us. Whatever happens on the other side of the U.S. border, only a Liberal government will protect supply management here.
The honourable member from Burnaby South.
In Canada, we believe healthcare should be there when you need it, and it should be free. Today,
Then why am I still sick, Jagmeet?
Trudeau was quoted saying that patients are typically told, I can do your surgery in 14 months. If you come to my private clinic, I can get it done in 1 month. It'll cost you $25,000. Dr. Trudeau says that's questionable, if not illegal. I think it's pretty clearly illegal. Does the Prime Minister agree?
The Honourable Minister of Health.
Public, universal, available for all, and most of all, making sure
Shut up.
pay. That we ensure in our country that when people
You don't even have
care,
the option to pay.
care of on the basis
This is communism.
not the size of their bank account. That's what distinguishes us from so many countries in the world. That is a principle that we stand up proudly for. I would suggest to the leader of the NDP, we've worked well together on things from pharmacare to dental care. There are many different challenges the provinces are presenting to health care right now, and certainly this party opposite, the Conservatives that would seek to ravage our health care system. Let's work together to make sure we protect it.
L'honorable député de Burnaby Sud.
The Liberals are letting people get charged to get to the front of the line. That should be illegal. Au Quebec, le prix
In Quebec, the
Give me
private
my
sector
script.
is taking up more and more of a role in healthcare.
That's embarrassing.
The Quebec College of Physicians and Surgeons is calling for this trend to be dealt with as quickly as possible. People who seek profit are causing longer delay times for healthcare. Why is the Prime Minister allowing U.S.-style companies to take advantage of Canadians suffering? The Honourable Minister of Health. Mr. Speaker, that's what's absolutely clear is that it's our government's priority to ensure that our healthcare system is universal.
Everyone has to suffer
And entirely public.
the same weight lines and the same fate
Canadians.
due to the
We've made a
government's
lot of headway
healthcare mismanagement.
with dental
It's horrible.
care and pharmacare But I think there's a lot of work that can still be done, that should still be done. But on the other side, the Conservative Party wants to cut. They want to make huge cuts to funding for health care, and that's totally unacceptable.
Make a two-tier system. If I want to pay for an ultrasound, I should have the ability.
After 9 years of these NDP Liberals, almost 50% of young Canadians believe they will never own a home. This Liberal housing accelerator is an absolute joke. Common sense Conservatives have a plan. They're going to axe the GST on new home builds. On an $800,000 house, this will save $40,000. Wow. And the Conservative leader has now written to the premiers of every province asking them to match this tax cut. When will these NDP Liberals finally get it through their heads? They're funding bureaucracies, axe the tax on new builds so young people can buy a house.
There you go.
Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Housing, Infrastructure and Communities.
He says the Housing Accelerator Fund is a joke, Mr. Speaker. Has he consulted with his caucus? A dozen, probably more, Conservative members have advocated specifically for that program. They went behind the back of the Leader of the Opposition because they wanted to advocate for their constituents to see more homes built. By calling for the end of the Housing Accelerator Fund, which is how they would pay for this new bold idea, so-called, they would end support to communities for homelessness. They would end support for more building for middle-class Canadians. Mr. Speaker, it's an unacceptable, untenable position.
Well said.
The honourable member from Dufferin-Caledon.
Oh man, here's what Liberal housing advisor Mike P. Moffat said about the Liberal Housing Accelerator. Can anyone in the federal government tell me why Toronto deserves $471 million in housing accelerator funds to massively hike development taxes? And housing starts in Toronto are down 20%. Even Liberal advisors know the housing accelerator's a joke. Will these NDP Liberals finally realize they're funding bureaucracies, tripling development charges, and not getting any houses built for young Canadians?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Housing, Infrastructure and Communities.
Young Canadians, he talks about home building in Canada, Mr. Speaker. They have 6 homes to point to when they were in office.
No, they don't.
That's the sum total of their work when they were in office, when the Leader of the Opposition held the so-called role of Minister of Housing. He wasn't a minister at all, Mr. Speaker. In fact, if you look at
they just blatantly lie.
190,000 number that they talk about during their time in office, that was home builders who did that, Mr. Speaker. It was not them. They know nothing about getting homes built. They know only about cuts. They would only make cuts to communities. It's not an acceptable position, Mr. Chair.
The honourable member from Parry Sound, Muskoka.
After 9 years of this NDP Liberal government, we know they're not worth the cost of housing. So bad is their record, in fact, that 80% of young Canadians believe that home ownership is only for the very rich. Conservatives will axe the federal sales tax on new homes sold under $1 million, saving Canadians up to $50,000 or $2,200 a year in mortgage payments. The Conservative leader has written premiers asking them to match our Conservative plan to axe the tax on housing, saving Canadians thousands more. This means real relief for young Canadians desperately trying to buy a home. Will the NDP Liberals axe the tax on housing so young Canadians can finally buy a home?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Housing.
Mr. Speaker, I worked with the honourable member on the House of Commons committee that's responsible for housing. He almost always brings up good points, except today there's a credibility issue at stake, Mr. Speaker. When he was mayor of Huntsville, prior to becoming member of Parliament, he increased development charges, which we agree are an impediment to home building. They are a tax on home building. How much did he increase development charges, Mr. Speaker? Not by 2 or 3%, Mr. Speaker, but by 16%, Mr. Speaker. They can't speak about these issues. They have.
The Liberals are alive. Look at that. They're making K-pop TV noises. Oh.
Order. The honourable member from Parry Sound, Muskoka.
Well, Mr. Speaker, when I was on council, we actually cut development charges by 50%, and I also knew as a mayor that if you get bureaucracy out of the way, you get more homes built. These guys don't understand that, though.
And you only need to build affordable housing when houses are unaffordable.
Cities all across this country.
So it's a massive L
Charges and housing
for the Liberals, no matter how you look at it.
common sense plan will save Canadians up to $50,000 on a new home. This is real relief for Canadians. So why can't they get on board and axe the tax on new homes?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Mr. Speaker, like former Conservatives, people like Joe Clark, for example, I recognize that Canada is a community of communities. And as an urban-based MP, I want to assure the honourable member opposite that I read the Huntsville Doppler, the newspaper of record in this community. He increased development charges by 16%. It was reported time and again in that newspaper, Mr. Speaker. They want to cut support for communities. They want to cut support for housing. Don't be fooled. The Leader of the Opposition ditched his glasses. Same guy that wants to cut pensions, support for housing, support for young people, support for EI. They're not serious, Mr. Speaker.
What do his glasses have anything to do with it?
The honourable member for Bellechasse-les-Etchemins-Lévis. Mr. Speaker, after 9 years, the Bloc Liberal Coalition
That was a weird
discouraged
comment.
young people from owning their own home. They've doubled rents, mortgage payments, and down payments. As we speak, 80% of Canadians think home ownership is only for the very rich. Our leader has tabled a common sense proposal, cut the GST on new homes. This idea has the support of CORPIC, the Quebec Residential Rental Properties Owners Association. Will the Bloc back...
Man, I got super lucky with my home purchase.
Or will they keep on funding their own...
I don't think I'd be able to afford a home today.
Houses?
I was extremely lucky.
The Honourable Minister for the Economic Development Agency. Mr. Speaker, my colleague's proposal is completely ill thought out because not only does it not deal with any increase in the supply of housing, it also comes at the expense of the poorest. Their agenda is clear now. They want to help people who want to buy, but cut back for people in need. I'd like to know from my colleague, the housing in her own riding, how is she going to explain to her constituents that she would cut and put in danger the rents of the people who need that housing? The honourable member for Bellechasse-les-Etchemins-Lévis. She can ask questions when she's in opposition. Mr. Speaker, the Conservative leader's proposal to scrap the GST on houses under $1 million would give young people the hope of being able to buy a home and maybe start a family. With this GST cut, some 30,000 new homes could be built. For an $800,000 home, for example, the GST savings would be $40,000. What's keeping this Liberal Bloc government from showing a little compassion and common sense by going ahead with our proposal? The Honourable Minister of Public Services and Procurement. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Three things. First of all, and my colleague knows this, the Conservative leader was responsible for the construction of only 6 housing units during his entire term. Last week, an agreement was what the Conservatives would do would be cutting a deal that has led to the building of thousands of units in Quebec, including units for seniors in need in the members' riding. That's the type of thing the Conservatives would like to cut. The honourable member for Lac-Saint-Jean. Quebec is still taking in more than its fair share of asylum seekers. And this is serious. There's still no plan for redistributing them among the other provinces. Immigration could skyrocket with tomorrow's U.S. election, and Donald Trump has said if he wins, he'll launch the largest deportation program in
my God, we're going to get flooded.
He wants to deport 18 million people. We asked the minister if he had a plan in case Trump's promises drive people into Canada, and he said yes. That's great. Now, can he explain that plan, Mr. Speaker? The Honourable Minister of Immigration. The member knows full well.
He's going to be out of a job so quick.
Reducing the number of asylum seekers arriving by 29% in Quebec. And this is the type of thing we can do by working together with Quebec in order to have a well-managed border with the
Oh
US.
man, if
We will
Trump
continue
wins,
to do that regardless of who
millions of people are going to flee to Canada.
But it's maybe premature to
legally and illegally.
Not a member for Lac Saint Jean. Mr. Speaker, to govern is to plan, and the Immigration Department has proven at every conceivable opportunity that they're not very good at it. So we're going to keep asking the minister for details of this plan, because without details, there's no good reason to believe it even exists. Tomorrow, if Trump wins, he's promised to deport 18 million people.
Oh my God.
If they're worried about a wave of immigration when Canada is already unable to manage the current influx of asylum seekers, well, what's coming? What's the plan if that happens?
18 million people.
Immigration, refugees, and citizenship.
That's half of Canada's population.
Plan, but I'm not going to tell them about it 24 hours before an election. That would be very imprudent, very irresponsible to do here in the House of Commons now.
No, it wouldn't.
Member for Lac Saint Jean. Well, if he doesn't want to answer questions, he shouldn't show up at question period. Mr. Speaker, the last time Donald Trump threatened to deport people, many headed for Canada. The result was Roxham Road, and we're still suffering the consequences. The result was Roxham Road because the federal government had no plan. The Prime Minister issued a blanket invitation to a wave of immigration without making the slightest preparations to get ready for it. And then it took him years to react. Today, Trump is setting the table for an even bigger wave than the one on Roxham Road. Nobody wants to live through that all over again. What's the plan?
The block is crazy today.
I won't do like the Bloc does constantly. We do have a plan. We'll keep working on it regardless of who's president tomorrow. This is not something that we're going to discuss on the floor of the House of Commons 24 hours before a U.S. election. So unlike the Bloc, we'll talk about that later.
After 9 years of these NDP Liberals, they are not worth the cost of housing. 50% of young Canadians have abandoned the dream of buying a home one day. Rent, mortgage, and down payment costs have all doubled. Common sense Conservatives will axe the federal sales tax on new homes sold. On an $800,000 house, this will save home buyers $40,000 or $2,200 a year in mortgage payments. Our plan means more housing for young Canadians desperately trying to enter the housing market for the first time. Will the NDP Liberals axe the GST on housing for more young Canadians so they can finally buy a home?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Housing, Infrastructure and Communities.
Mr. Speaker, as we've seen, the Conservatives continue to say that they'll make cuts to pay for their proposals, including this GST initiative, so-called. So what will that mean? It means the Accelerator Fund will come to an end. The member is from Kelowna. A few weeks ago, I met with Kelowna's Mayor Tom Dias, who shared with me that federal funding secured through the Housing Accelerator Fund has led to a digital permit system that's improved approvals that would have taken even a year ago, a year and a half plus to approve. That approval permit process now is less than 10 days, Mr. Speaker. Huge change.
So are they saying that reducing permit times is good?
Well, even the Liberal Housing Advisor, Mike P. Moffat, on the failed Liberal Housing Plan said the federal Liberals have lost the plot. Habitat for Humanity said reducing GST would reduce costs. Canadian Home Builders Association said
If the Liberals reduce the GST, they would be admitting
said this proposed
that there's a housing crisis.
move forward, lowering building costs, increasing housing supplies, and making home ownership more attainable for Canadians. Will the NDP Liberals axe the GST on housing so more young Canadians can finally buy a home?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Leader of the Government in the House of Commons.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, the simple answer is the Conservative policy on housing is a dud. That's the bottom line, Mr. Speaker. And let me tell you about an issue that Canadians are truly concerned about. You have the leader of the Conservative Party that continues to refuse to get a security clearance. I believe Canadians have a right to know why it is that the Conservative leader refuses to get it. What is he hiding? Is there something about his past that Canadians should know about? It's time the leader step up and be honest with Canadians.
The honourable member from...
What a weird take that is.
Mr. Speaker, after 9 years of NDP Liberals, they are simply not worth the cost of housing. There are encampments all over the city of Abbotsford, including our beloved Cenotaph. Young people are feeling hopeless, knowing that even with a good salary, they will not be able to afford a new house. Conservatives understand that, and that's why we've proposed to a federal GST on new homes, a tax cut that will spark 30,000 new developments. Will the NDP Liberals axe the federal GST on housing so more young Canadians can finally buy a home?
There you go.
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Housing, Infrastructure and Communities.
They want to pay for this idea by slashing the Housing Accelerator Fund. So let's understand what that means, Mr. Speaker. This is support for communities across the country, large and small. Support for communities to get people off the street and into homes.
Cut the GST,
for zoning changes that will allow for more building. Giving young people, the ones that they talk about and claim to care about here today, more options. You give people more options, the the costs come down, Mr. Speaker. Infrastructure support, so that water connections, for example, can be connected to housing. They don't believe in that either. Support for vacant buildings to be converted into housing, Mr. Speaker. All of this is on the table.
The Honourable Member from North Island, Powell River.
Mr. Speaker, Persian Gulf War veterans are asking this government for recognition. Brave soldiers came home with Gulf War illness.
Don't say it, chat.
And burn pit poisoning. And still they have to fight the Liberals to get the recognition and benefits they deserve, just like they had to fight the Conservatives before them. It is shameful. Will the minister make this right and grant these veterans wartime status, or will she hide behind legislation and disrespect their service?
Hear, 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 hear.
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of des Anciens Combattants.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think the Committee on Veterans Affairs has currently studied this matter. We're waiting for their report, and I can assure you that the government will respond to that forthwith. The Persian Gulf War veterans have done a great service for this country, and we all deserve to see their response from this report, and I assure you that the government will respond accordingly. Thank you.
The Honourable Member from Windsor West.
Mr. Speaker, the Liberals have done nothing to protect Canadians from giant telcos pricing gouging. For weeks, hundreds of Canadians are raising their voices because they feel bamboozled. They signed a service contract, were promised a price, then the bills come in with even higher prices. Giant telcos are digging deeper in Canadian pockets. Meanwhile, Liberals sit on their hands and Conservatives are silent as to not upset their CEO donors. Canadians deserve better. Will the minister finally use his powers to stop these snake oil salesman tactics that the telcos use to trick Canadians?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of
Oh, gross.
Mr. Speaker, we expect all telecommunication companies to clearly communicate contract terms and pricing changes to its customers. The minister has spoken directly with Rogers on this important issue. And in the past two budgets, we've taken critical steps to crack down on unnecessary fees and eliminate switching charges so customers can cancel and switch to cheaper plans and access lower charges. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable
Guys, look at the floor right here. It's got a bunch of dirty spots on the Liberal side. That's disgusting. Clean your floors. I'm not talking about the shadows. If you zoom in, you can see right here, right here, right here, right here. That's gross.
Member from Mississauga Malton.
Mr. Speaker, very recently we've seen acts
Bunch of pee stains, probably.
at the Hindu Sabha Mandir in Brampton and the Shri Guru Granth Sabha in Malton. Speaker, the vast majority of Canadians are peace-loving and believe that every Canadian should have the right to practice their faith freely and safely. We've also heard from the RCMP that foreign elements are seeking to destabilize the harmony in our communities to provide evidence for their own rhetoric. These actions must be condemned. Can the minister please comment on these incidents and tell Canadians what the government is doing to keep them safe? Thank you.
Dude, that was crazy. For those that saw the video, they broke into a freaking temple.
And people with disabilities.
Mr. Speaker, we strongly condemn acts of violence, hate that took place outside Hindu Sabha Mandir and Guru Singh Sabha Gurdwara. These acts need to stop. Everyone deserves to feel safe in their places of worship. I've spoken to Pierre Regional Police Chief Nish and have full confidence in our local authorities to investigate and to de-escalate. As Canadians, Mr. Speaker, we must stand united against hate and against all those who try to destabilize peace and unity between our communities. Thank you.
Yeah.
The honourable member from Bay of Quinte.
Mr. Speaker, after 9 years of this Liberal NDP government, Canada has become the caboose to America's high-flying economic engine. The GDP per capita has become so stark that the average American worker is now making $22,000 more than the Canadian worker. Why? Well, because Americans don't pay a carbon tax. They don't have high fly-raising capital gains taxes. And they don't have soft trade policies. So when will this Prime Minister finally admit that his high taxes, soft trade policies have derailed Canadian prosperity, or is he content in keeping Canadian workers riding in the back in the caboose?
Good question. The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, I can't do it.
May have an inferiority complex
Speaker.
vis-a-vis the United States, but I sure don't. Let me tell you what's better in Canada. Inflation is lower. Interest rates are lower. We live 4 years longer because we have a universal single-payer healthcare system. And you know what? Investors are noticing the Canadian advantage. Here's what David Rosenberg said last week. U.S.-based investors should strongly consider moving from New York to Toronto because returns here are better too.
Dude, there's like 10 million Canadians that don't have doctors.
Amazing, Mr. Speaker, because the Liberal candidate Mark Carney moved his company to New York. But let me tell you what's actually happening in the Canadian economy. 90,000 jobs have been lost since 2015 in the softwood lumber industry. 90,000 jobs, 40,000 of them in BC alone. The last Prime Minister figured the softwood lumber deal in 79 days. It's been 9 years and 3 U.S. presidents. How many jobs have to be chopped before this Prime Minister figures out that high taxes and a weak, soft spine won't bring jobs back and paychecks to Canadians and across the softwood lumber industry?
That's good. Here we go.
Honourable Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker,
I'm too sick still.
we will take no lessons from these weak Conservatives when it comes to standing up for the Canadian national interest. And that's because we remember the 232 steel and aluminum interests that the U.S. imposed on us. And when we did that, we retaliated. We had the guts to do that. And you know what the Conservatives said? They urged us to back down. They said that retaliation was dumb. They would sell Canadian interests out again in a minute. We will never do that.
The Honourable Member for Chicoutimi-Le-Fjord. Mr. Speaker, after 9 years and 3 American presidents, this Prime Minister has failed to renegotiate the softwood lumber agreement. He failed where the previous Conservative Prime Minister succeeded. And that just 90 days after being elected. After the closing of the sawmill in Maniwaki and in Mauricie, we now learned that another sawmill is about to close its doors in Quebec. Why are the Liberals continuing to abandon forestry workers?
The
Honourable Minister of Exports and International Development, Trade.
Hey!
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I want to
It's a traitor.
that question. As he well knows,
she's named
the forestry
as Chinese interference.
Really important in creating thousands and thousands of jobs across this country. We've been working very hard with the forestry industry. But what I've also learned from the sector is that they're really looking to expand into new markets. And I'm very pleased that our government, the Trade Commissioner Service, is really helping them to access new markets while at the same time working to continue to try to get a deal with the United States.
Where's my foreign interference whistle?
The Honourable Member for Chicoutimi-Le-Fjord. Mr. Speaker, I'll say it again, 3 American presidents. And 9 years later, this Liberal Prime Minister has still not managed to renegotiate a
I don't get it.
agreement.
I don't know how she's still standing.
And a clear lack of leadership. 3 sawmills have closed their doors in just a few months. The most recent in Saint-Ludger-de-Millau. It's a village of 600 people. 100 of those people are about to lose their jobs. When will there be elections so that our leader can succeed where this Prime Minister has lamentably failed?
The Honourable Minister
goes again.
Trade.
I need my trader whistle.
Those wonderful workers.
My Chinese
sector that they
foreign interference.
They
tweet
contribute tremendously, not only to the economy of Quebec, but certainly to the economy of Canada. But I do have a question for the member opposite, and that is for his leader. And why is the leader not going to get his security clearance so that he can protect Canadians? That's right.
Yeah, you would like that, wouldn't you?
The Honourable Member for Repentigny. The Environment Minister's announcement today is extremely disappointing. It's been 2 years since he presented his intention to regulate a cap on GHG emissions in the oil and gas sector. And you can understand our impatience, but there's nothing in the minister's announcement which will reduce oil production. Quite the contrary. He says that it's going to go up by 16%. No effort required for big oil. The oil companies will continue to beat production records with the approval of this Liberal government. When will they start to really fight climate change? The Honourable Minister of the Environment and Climate Change. Mr. Speaker,
Harry Potsmoker.
The Bloc Québécois has been encouraging us to interfere in provincial jurisdictions. The world is turning upside down. Natural resources, as the Bloc Québécois knows very well, is provincial jurisdiction. So what we will do is act on pollution, and that's exactly what we're doing, Mr. Speaker. The sector is going to have to reduce its greenhouse gas emissions by 35% under 2019 levels. This is an important element in our climate change plan. And on this side of the House, we believe in climate change. We have a plan for the economy, and we have a plan for the future of workers in the sector. The Honourable Member for Jonquière. What the minister isn't saying is that there's a major part of the money that's coming from Quebec. 9 years now the Liberals have been in power, and the Bloc has been calling for a cap on oil and gas sector GHG emissions. 3 years ago, they promised to do it. 2 years ago, they tabled a draft regulation without putting anything into place. And all that to end up with regulations that don't require any results from the oil and gas sector before 2030. It's that inaction that's going to lead us straight into the wall in 2030. Not the upcoming election, not the opposition party. So why is the minister incapable of requiring even just a little effort from the oil and gas sector before 2030? The Honourable Minister of the Environment and Climate Change. Mr. Speaker, I have a lot of respect for my
He's like one of the only ones that has
invite him to
a weird poppy
on the oil and gas.
He doesn't even have a real poppy on.
Which requires that the regulations come into effect in 2026, not in 2030, as he said. We presented the document a year ago, not 2 years ago, Mr. Speaker, and if since the Bloc Québécois seems to be so eager to go to elections with the Conservatives, well, they can do it, but there won't be a cap on emissions in the oil and gas sector if they do that. They'll be able to pollute all they want under a Conservative government.
Member from Banff-Airdrie.
After 9 years of NDP Liberals, taxes are up, costs are up, crime is up, and time is up. The cost of the carbon tax is sending record numbers of Canadians to food banks, but food banks are struggling with the carbon tax too. For one Alberta food bank, paying the carbon tax means that there is $280,000 less food for those who are going hungry. This Prime Minister's policies are hurting the most vulnerable and those who work to help them. So will the Prime Minister finally call a carbon tax election so Conservatives can fix what he broke?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Leader of the Government.
Mr. Speaker, we all know that the leader of the Conservative Party had a flip-flop when it came to the price on pollution. But where we're really disappointed is that we have a leader of the Conservative Party who refuses
to get his security clearance
interest ahead of his personal interest and the interests of the Conservative Party. It's time that the Conservative leader step up to the plate and get the security clearance that's needed, Mr. Speaker, in dealing with foreign interference. What is he hiding, Mr. Speaker? He needs to be transparent. He has to tell us about his past. There's something there he needs to tell Canadians, Mr. Speaker.
That's such a weird take.
The Honourable Member from Banff-Airdrie.
What an insult that is to Canadians who are going hungry.
Yeah.
And that's not only that, but it's Veterans Week, and there's far too many of the heroes who bravely served Canada who now cannot count on sitting down to their next meal. In fact, food insecurity amongst veterans has gotten so bad due to the NDP Liberal carbon tax that some legions are having to divert the funds from their poppy campaigns to instead help keep the local food banks afloat. So when will the Prime Minister call a carbon tax election so common sense Conservatives can ensure that veterans finally get the respect that they deserve?
Man, the Legion is really good at helping people out.
Here to the Leader of the Government in the House of Commons.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, let me tell you what an insult is. When you have the Leader of the Conservative Party continuing to...
Legion helped me out back in the day.
...personal interest and the interests of the Conservative Party, Mr. Speaker. Let's be clear. The Leader of the Conservative Party is hiding something. There's something about his past that he does not want Canadians to know. Mr. Speaker, there is an obligation for the Leader of the Conservative Party to come clean and tell Canadians what it is that he's hiding. Why won't he get that security clearance?
That's so weird. He's shushing instead of muting. We did it.
Order.
Oh, he stopped muting the mic.
The honourable member from Moose Jaw, Lake Centre, Lanigan.
Mr. Speaker, costs are up, crime is up, and time is up. Moose Jaw's Food Bank faced a temporary closure due to rising costs of food and lack of donations this summer.
Oh my God.
People facing temporary hardship were the ones that used the food bank. Now, it's people with good jobs being forced to use the food bank because the cost of everything has gone up. Mr. Speaker, when will this Prime Minister call a carbon tax election so people can put something under the tree and on their table this Christmas?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Innovation.
Well, I'm glad to hear the member opposite use the word security again. You know, what this House should be preoccupied with, and that all Canadians are preoccupied with.
Wreck-It Ralph. That's who he reminds me of. Just a big dummy.
As to why the Conservative
Watch that this weekend.
will not get his security clearance. It's been months and months and months. This House has been preoccupied with foreign interference, and yet the Conservative leader won't step up and do the very...
He should be put on an 18-month wait list for
this House have done, which is to
CAT scan, because I feel like he's got some brain damage. By the way he talks.
The honourable member from Coquitlam, Port Coquitlam.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, our kids need help. The internet is not a safe place for them right now. We need to hold
As he's reading from his phone.
and put the safety of our children first by passing the Online Harms Act. Unfortunately, we can't debate this bill because all business in the House is stalled.
Dude, you have so many laws that protect.
Amanda Todd's mother, Carol, one of my constituents, recently spoke to the Globe and Mail calling
So many laws that protect kids.
pass Bill C-63. Can the Minister of Justice and Attorney General explain why parents across...
It's that weird bill that's going to deal with, they're guising it as protecting kids, but it's going to just censor the internet.
Justice and Attorney General.
Mr. Speaker, I want to thank Carol Todd for her courage. Carol's daughter, Amanda, tragically died by suicide 12 years ago after being victimized online. Now Carol is calling on every parliamentarian to take action and pass the Online Harms Act. To quote Carol, she said, "The filibuster that is happening right now and holding everything up is frustrating. It's just wasting time. I've waited 12 years for this. Conservatives have shown they will not prioritize children or protecting them. But I put it to the Bloc and the NDP that they have the power right now to stop this filibuster, protect kids, and pass this bill. Will they?"
That's scary. Here we go, Melissa.
Honourable member from Thornhill.
Two hardened criminals, a stolen car, and a police chase.
It's not the plot of a blockbuster movie. It's daily life in Canada after 9 years of this Prime Minister. This weekend, the Toronto police officers...
Props to her for saying Blockbuster instead of Netflix.
But not before the crooks injured a horse, rammed a bunch of vehicles, destroyed a business, and put innocent shoppers in danger. We know that both offenders were out on bail thanks to the Liberal NDP counter police policy that has made this country more dangerous for victims and more lenient for criminals. So why was this government putting police and the public at risk instead of putting criminals in jail where they belong?
Repeat offenders. Who would have thought?
That member talks a big game, but when it comes to GTA politics, let's actually assess what police officers are saying. The Deputy Chief of Police in York Region has said, if you actually want to get tough on bail, you need to support the courts, the crowns, and fix the detention centers. Guess who has jurisdiction over all of that? The member from Thornhill should know that's the province. You want to get tough on dealing with bail? Let's have the province support criminal justice in this country and keep our communities safe.
No, members are very passionate about many issues. I'm going to ask the member from Kamloops, Thompson, Caribou, as well as the member from Sarnia-Lambton, please, not to take the mic unless recognized by the chair. The honourable member from Thornhill.
That answer is offensive to every single police officer who puts their life on the line and offensive to every single Canadian who has been a victim of violent crime. Last year, 8 police officers were killed in just 7 months, and violent crime has gone up 30%. Scenes like the one from downtown Toronto are no longer extraordinary. They're becoming the norm under his watch. Provincial governments, municipalities, police associations said they all want change, but the minister responds with that, whatever that was. His recklessness is turning criminals out onto the streets and putting the public at risk. Why is he the only one that doesn't see it?
Yeah. Put a W down for Melissa.
The Honourable Minister of Justice and Attorney General.
Let's listen to police officers. Here's the Deputy Chief of York Region. There's just not simply enough court space to hold contested bail hearings. Let's listen to the National Police Federation, who pointed out, newsflash, that when you have JPs with no legal training, sometimes there may be some issues with their rendering of decisions and keeping our community safe. Where do they train JPs legally before they appoint them? Nova Scotia. Maybe that's a lesson that Doug Ford could take. If she needs it in a 3-word slogan, here it is. Talk to the Premier.
Is that a bald spot on the back of his head?
Order, please. The honourable member for Charlebourg-Haute-Saint-Charles. Philippe Léger in the Journal de Montréal said that police's concerns about gangs in Montreal is scary. The Montreal Police Service says that Montreal is becoming like Marseille in France, a place where the authorities are losing control. Mr. Léger said that if the criminal world has changed, our laws need to change as well, starting with mandatory minimum sentences for all criminals who are recruiting young people to commit crimes. Does the Prime Minister agree, or will he continue to stand with criminals? The Honourable Minister of Public Safety. Mr. Speaker, we will continue to work with police organizations. My colleague mentioned the police force in Montreal. We regularly have discussions with the chief. I spoke with him as recently as last week. We are supporting the important work that they're doing. We're also supporting the important work of the RCMP and the Border Services Agency, who have a role to play in supporting municipal and provincial police forces. This is work that we are doing. This is work that the Conservatives forgot to do, and they cut those organizations. The Honourable Member for Alfred Belland. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Over 1 million Canadians have already received dental care thanks to the Canada Dental Plan that our government has put in place. This is a historic investment which will benefit Canadians, but the Conservative members voted day after day against this program, which is benefiting Canadians and Quebecers. And they keep saying that the program doesn't exist and that they have the intention to cut it. Can the Minister of Fisheries please explain how this program is helping Quebecers get the dental care that they need? The Honourable Minister of Fisheries and Oceans and the Canadian Coast Guard. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Over 1 million Canadians, including 325,000 Quebecers, have already received care under our dental care program. The Conservatives are playing games with the health of Canadians and Canadian seniors by offering nothing more than slogans and cuts to the programs that they need. Canadians and Quebecers deserve a government that cares about health care. On our side of the House, we know that the Conservatives only want to make cuts, no matter how many seniors will be affected by that. What's the Conservatives' hidden agenda, Mr. Speaker?
To save our money?
Center. This morning, the BC Maritime Employers Association imposed a bad faith lockout on over 700 ILW Local 514 workers at BC ports. This blatant attempt to manipulate this Liberal government into undermining workers' rights is an outrageous assault on free collective bargaining. So, will this Liberal minister categorically reject any intervention that would force these port workers to give up their collective bargaining rights, or will he bow to the employer?
Yes.
Honourable Minister of Labour and for Seniors.
Mr. Speaker, I spoke with the BC MEA and the ILWU on the weekend and reminded them that it is their responsibility to their members and to each other, to Canadians, to farmers, to workers, to businesses, to get a deal. It is their responsibility, and they need to do the work necessary to get an agreement.
The honourable member from Kitchener Centre.
Mr. Speaker, keeping track of the tens of billions this government gives to big oil's gamble on carbon capture, it's near impossible. Yet for proven solutions like public transit, no new funds till after the next election, a fraction of what carbon capture gets, and transit operations won't even be eligible. We could add $4 billion for public transit tomorrow by taxing the excess profits of the oil and gas industry. So when will this government put in place an excess profits on that of the oil and gas industry and put it towards reducing fares and improving service on public transit?
The Honourable Minister for the Environment and Climate Change.
Mr. Speaker, and I thank the honourable colleague for his question. First, the federal government is investing historic amounts in public transit, Mr. Speaker, $30 billion. There are more than 400 kilometres of subway lines being built in Canada right now because of federal investment. Second, we're the only country in the G20. No other country in the G20 has phased out subsidies to fossil fuels. We're the only ones that have done that, despite a commitment made under the previous government to do that, on which they did absolutely nothing, Mr. Speaker. We're there to help Canadians with transit, but we're also there to fight climate change.
Yeah, because taxes are going to stop the rain and stop storms from happening, apparently. Oh, what are they doing now?
I'd like to point out to members that present in the gallery is...
Yeah, no. We did that once. We did that once. We're not doing that again. I did not see that coming. Who's up in the gallery? I don't think so, buddy. Looks like it's the end of the question period today, folks. I'm just going to read off some of the super chats that I haven't acknowledged. Of course, starting with the Big D Energy from today. Yarvin Darkel with a $100 super chat to help with your diaper fund, Jasper. I know how expensive they are. I got too many humans. Holy smokes, dude. That is awesome. Very much appreciated. Thank you for that. That was a good question period today, folks. That was a really good question period today. I totally thought Pierre was going to be there. It sucks that he wasn't. I don't know where else he would be. Trudeau, again, he is in Ottawa, but we don't know what he was doing, like meeting with other people, I guess, hiding under his desk, watching the stream. We don't really know. Good diaper deal. Yeah, no doubt, John. No doubt. Jazz with the 5 saying, John Boko, my brother, seeks support the Conservatives. We also want the overstayers to also go home, but using racism is only going to cause divide. That's right. We just want people in Canada to get along and to be pro-Canadian. That's it. That's all we want here in Canada is people to focus on Canadian things and the whole like separatist movement, the Khalistani stuff. We just want Canadians to get along, play nicely, and when it comes time, vote respective to how, you know, it would benefit individual people's lives. There you go. Matt the Electrician 279 saying, I want to give Mark Holland a swirly. I want to give Mark Holland a swirly. Dude, that's pretty funny, man. That's what's that? You put the head in the toilet and you flush? I believe that's what that is. And let's see here. JL with the 2 saying, where do they get the 6 houses numbers from, or is it fake? So they are claiming that when Pierre Poilievre was housing minister under Harper, that he only provided 6 affordable houses. I don't know where they're getting that number from. I think he provided hundreds of thousands, over 150,000. I'm not too sure, but I honestly don't know where they keep getting 6 from, but they keep regurgitating the same stuff. And it hasn't really gotten any traction. Like mainstream media doesn't talk about 6 houses. Nobody except the Liberals talk about that. And specifically in the House of Commons, where they're protected under parliamentary privilege, right? Where they can't get sued. Deborah with the 1399 saying CPAC has 1.3 thousand watching, and House of Canada at the time had 3.2 thousand watching. That's right, man. We got a strong base here. That's incredible. That's absolutely incredible. We always seem to outperform CPAC by tenfold, by double at least. Pretty cool. Yeah, thanks, Deborah, for that. Someone in the chat is saying it was over 400,000 houses. So there you go. Over 400K houses that Pierre was able to put forward under affordable housing. And then Andrew Lapinese with the 2 saying the Liberals are the epitome of Freudian slips. Yeah, they definitely keep saying things that they certainly shouldn't be saying. But they do anyways. They do very much slip the truth from time to time. Folks, this is where we're going to end the stream. I want to thank everybody for tuning in. Thank you for all the support. If you haven't yet already, I'd like to encourage you guys to smash the like button. We're at like 1,500 likes. It'd be cool for those that haven't yet already to drop a like. And then I did mention this at the start of the stream, but for those that didn't see it, I'll say it one more time again. So this sticker pack here is available, linked down below in the description. It's also the pinned comment of the live stream. You get the Only Scam sticker, you get Freeland on a Broom, Trudeau Must Go, Keep Calm, Never Vote Liberal, and Stop the WEF, and the other sticker pack as well. I think it's 15% off. I don't think it's less than that. I don't know if it's more than that, but I know for sure there's at least 15% when you use code SUNSHINE. So make sure you do that. That was reserved just for the channel members, but I'll just say it now, once at the start of the stream and now once at the end of the stream. And quite a few people did scoop some up at the start of the stream. And yeah, so it's there. Get them before the discount code is no longer available. And thanks for watching, everybody. We'll see you guys same time